So I think I'm live. Hey Joe, it may be just us two right now. I got some stuff to talk about tonight. Uh, Masons, Templars, pirates, and I do have hopefully Luna joining us in a bit. I saw her pop in, she popped out, so maybe. And Nese is going to be along tonight too, and Tommy will be arriving late, but he will be here. So if you've got any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in. So I wish that I could play some pirate songs for you, but that'd be a copyright. Yeah, Joe, I remember those old days of the inside joke of first. Oh, thank you. It was something that just kind of happened. Oh, thank you. I mean, how's the I was just messing around, and this is the background that we were yarning about. We were talking about backgrounds. I found this inside YouTube Studio. I just kind of uploaded a picture. A green screen is recommended for obvious reasons, but because I'm pretty sure I could go into settings and take care of that. But I'm just gonna let it roll tonight because I mean you don't have to sail on water to be a pirate. There's other kinds. Where I pirate, I don't need water. So I don't know where to start. Yeah, so I thought about doing like a pirate ship thingy, and I couldn't really find one that I liked. So I just kind of gonna keep it with this one. So who else is here with us? And I didn't do it before I came on, but I did remember to share a link with everyone, and I put it in a couple of different places. So I'm out there. So and I'm sitting here, and in hindsight, I kind of wish that I would have got some of those pictures that I came across for just for comic relief. Uh, so let me just see if I can do something since it's just us. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so I'm totally able to like pull up some stuff. This was an interesting article that I found. This was a little bit of pirates, a little bit of Knights Templar, and a little bit of Masons all in one. That was an interesting article. And I think I've got another one. Yeah, and this one was an interesting article as well. I mean, this is the difference between pieces of eight and reels and asciuttos, and why treasure was worth so much back in the day of piracy. And it talks about the buying power that it has behind it. See, we have an arrival of the starboard bow. And, and Nese, can you hear me? Yama Luna? And actually, let me. I love your hat, but you're muted. I can't hear you. All right. Can anybody hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Luna is muted.
Of course I am.
Ah,
G'day, Jules. G'day,
good
Nese.
day.
How are we today? Har, 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 har. Oh, you know what I found out last night? Dressing up like a pirate, I really like it, and it brings out something inside me.
Yep, fun times for sure. But you look fantastic. I like that. You threw it together well.
Yeah, I was a pirate in one of my lifetimes, I'm sure.
No, I'm not sure if I was, but I'm fairly positive some of my ancestors were.
I even got me cave.
Yes,
Treasures
you
in there. Okay, I'll behave myself now.
do. No, I mean when you guys dropped in, I was just I was literally kind of multitasking. I was showing Joe a couple of the articles that I found, and I was actually learning how to screen share too. I was still a little slow with it, but I've made progress.
Cool.
And then
How are you,
company
Nese?
came, and here we are.
First mate, Nese? I was trying to think of a pirate name. Couldn't think of anything.
You know, I racked my brain all day to figure out my pirate name, and I had no luck.
Like to share the website, decline, but accept.
That's all right.
Button. Mute microphone. Show sidebar. Button.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know what's going on. I am trying to use my daughter's iPad again because usually my phone heats up to the point of shutting down. So we'll see what happens. So how are you two?
I'll be doing good.
I've had a bit of a week, but we're okay. Oh,
I just thought you were getting ready to say something.
no.
Yeah, so
All right.
I did catch up with Tommy. He's going to be a little late, but he'll be on his way.
Cool. All right, so we need pirate music. Har.
Yeah, I
So-
know. It's like everything that came to mind is like I can't play that. Copyright.
Ah,
I can't play
yeah.
that. Copyright.
What do we do with a drunken sailor? What do we do with a drunken sailor? What do we do with a drunken sailor early in the morning?
I got one.
All right, that's it. Show's over. I'm going to listen to music now. Just kidding. But no, they actually did have musicians on ships, and
Yes, they had theaters also.
yeah, they had all kinds of stuff on ships that I don't ever remember reading in the history books, but then again, I mean, uncovering your own history is what makes it fun.
Well, and one of the stories that I came across is that at one moment, because these pirates out there on the ocean needs to be entertained. That's one of the reasons why on the ship, when I was in the Navy, they're constantly having you do something because boredom is there. You know, the adventure isn't such an adventure when all you're doing is routine maintenance day in and day out. And so they would have bands and theater. And one report was somebody was drunk, and during a play where somebody was found guilty and they were going to punish him, the guy responded by attacking the other actors and trying to free the individual. And apparently somebody lost an arm and somebody was killed. So wonder if he got keyhauled from that incident.
Yeah, I always thought that keel hauling was when they literally took you from one side of the boat to other, and underneath, if the intent was the barnacles would kill you.
Yeah, that was one of the primary punishments that happened. Walking the plank is still kind of argued if it actually happened.
Yeah, I'm kind of led to believe that that was a little Hollywood romanticism.
Yeah, that I'm still open to that debate on it, but the keel hauling was a known thing. Also, public whipping with a cat of nine
Yes.
was something else where you would be strapped to one of the masses and then they would whip you. Keel hauling is when they would take a rope and put it from starboard to port, and then they would tie you to it, and then they would drag you underneath the ship, which usually was covered with barnacles that would just rip you apart. But then they would also drag you behind the ship with a weight on you to eventually succumb to the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of history, lore with the sea. And I'm pretty sure that it all began when man first built boat. Because piracy goes way back up until modern times. And I kind of have speculated every now and then that the piracy, as in the Knights Templar and getting into the Pirates of the Golden Age, I sometimes wonder if it's still the same thing. They just threw out as time moved forward and history changed, and those who wrote history just changed the story slightly, and it's still the same people with all the wealth.
I apologize. I'm going to do a quick mute because I think I got this figured out for my daughter's iPad. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, I wonder about the wealth too, Jules, because I know that wasn't the pirates signed up with the Queen because she put them forward, or the King at the time. They put them to go out and do stuff for them that they didn't want everyone else to know.
Mhm.
Like they're not.
Well, I
That's
mean,
why I'm interested.
yeah, and I mean, and then you have the Jacobites, who a lot of the pirates that were in the golden age of piracy in the Caribbean, they were fighting in that Jacobite war because they wanted the Stuarts on the throne. So I mean, piracy, it's not just the romanticism of them. There are historical facts that happen with pirates. I mean, if you like barbecue, that's a pirate. I mean, those were the Buccaneers.
Oh, we'll argue with that in Australia about the barbecue. We say us blackfellas had the first barbecue.
Yeah, I mean, it was the Buccaneers, and then the Spanish adopted the method, but they called it barbacoa. And then from the Spanish, that's where barbecue came. And barbecue, by American standards, or more or less my standards, American barbecue is the way that it's cooked, and not the sloth. That's all the sauce. That's all slathered on it.
Yeah, it's the way it's cooked. Because I was going to say, but basically, barbecue is like the oldest way of cooking ever. Because you put on the fire, it's just a fire. Put
Yeah.
on the fire. There's different ways of doing it. Here in Australia, we got the Islanders. You know that, like, we've adopted the Islanders as part of our mob, even though they're different people, but we're all together. They do what they call a cut murray. What's another name for it? A hungy is another name, where they actually put a fire in the sand and then they put all the food in and then cover it up, and the hot sand, it makes like a big oven. And then they dig it up a couple of hours later and everything's all cooked, and they wrap it up in leaves and stuff like that. That's another old way of cooking besides just chucking it on the fire.
Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes.
There's 4 of us.
I'll be.
Nice.
me
You
will
invite one of your friends. Is that Alan?
And
Gone.
say something, because
something.
yeah,
Something.
you dropped the right one. I was trying to figure out which one it was so I could do it, but you beat me to it.
The many personalities of
Yeah.
That one.
I'm arguing with myself who to answer.
Okay.
Her.
So where shall we go over the 7 seas?
I'm really interested to hear about pirates, knights, and Templars, because in my bloodline, there's something in my bloodline that I'm not really proud of, and I don't mention it often, and it's got to do with Templars. So I want to know the connection. Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Thanks, Nese.
Yeah, so some of the puzzle pieces I have are the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, that all had sported that Maltese cross that in the Crusades, that's the emblem of the Knights Templar.
Oh, yeah, it is. Like I said, it's something I don't really talk about, but it's come up, so I'm really interested.
Well, as I've shared before with our beloved captain, because we had a equal interest in pirates, that from my investigation of the Knights Templar in 1307, where Friday the 13th came from, that France, the King of France, and the Pope of the Church, they wanted to go after the Knights Templar and all of their booty, riches. And on a specific day, Friday the 13th, October 1307, they went to round up all of the Templars. Now, the Templars at this time had the largest fleet in the known world, civilized world. And because of alliances with the Templars, they got forewarning and the fleet disappeared. 1/3 of the fleet ended up in Scotland. And shortly after that became the Scottish Rite of Masonry. 1/3 of the ships showed up in England, where you got the New York Rite of Freemasonry. The other third disappeared and ended up where? In the Caribbean, because they knew of the New World's Well, it wasn't really new because they knew of them, of South America and North America. However, the challenge they had is how do they go to war against these Paleo Americans that were considered the giants? And so when you look at the fact that in Europe, the average height was around 5'2". And when you looked at my ancestors, the Anishinaabe, they proclaimed they were 7 feet tall, the men, and 6 feet tall, the women. And the same went throughout the indigenous people of North and South America. So, how can they wipe them out when they were so huge? It would be difficult to fight them. And so, during the plagues, biological warfare, they would take ships and fill them with all of the dead bodies, ships that were to be decommissioned. And they would let them go out into the Atlantic, where they would eventually find the Atlantic jet stream. And remember in Finding Nemo, when Crush, the transatlantic current, where you basically could find this current, be in a boat, and within a month, it would bring you across the Atlantic Ocean. And so these ships filled with plague bodies would crash upon the shores of South America and North America. And the Paleo Americans, being curious, would go on these ships, find all these dead bodies, bring them back home. Biological warfare. And millions and billions of entities died. So then they had a greater opportunity to come and take them over, because ships would be able to take over islands, because all they would have to do is surround the islands. And so a lot of these islands were ports of strategic demand. And they had all of these maps of the Americans. And Christopher Columbus, whose wife's father was one of the well-known map holders within the Masons, and thus Christopher Columbus, who actually wasn't his name until after he came back from the discovery, alleged discovery. And that's why those ships had those huge iron crosses on their ship sails, because it was a signal to their brethren that, hey, we're part of the same group. Let's have a parlay. And that my belief, theory, assumption is that island that Kevin was so obsessed with, that TV show.
Oh yeah, the Curse of Oak Island.
Yes, the Oak Island was a huge strategic point to where they were utilizing it to strategize how to take over North and South America. And another reason, the Jolly Rogers. When you look at the flags of the pirateers, which they eventually became called pirateers, I believe the word pirate is from a Greek word. I can't remember what it is, but it means to steal, to take.
Yes.
So, yeah. So the symbology, the iconography with the Masons and the pirates were very, very similar.
Yeah, I came across an interesting article on there's a couple of different theories out there on how the Jolly Roger became about. One of them actually had to do with it with a Knights Templar and a lady, and this one was interesting because I'll actually share my screen with it, because this one actually ties in with what Nese was saying, and then this article goes on a little bit. He kind of gives what he speculates is going on. Anybody care to for a quick trip to Speculation Island?
Hey, quick trip. I'll be there forever.
All right, so before I begin, I must get rid. First mate needs to go on the floor for just a second. All right, so and the article, it's called The History of the Jolly Roger, and it's from the Dread Pirate Info. There are those who believe the origin of skull and crossbones on the black flag, also commonly known as a Jolly Roger, is unknown. I would like to offer what I believe is a plausible possibility as to the origins of the pirate flag. The legend is grisly and horrific, but it must be told nonetheless. A great lady of Markaleo was loved by a Templar, a lord of Sidian, but she died in her youth, and on the night of her burial, this wicked lover crept to the grave, dug up her body, and violated it. Then a voice from the void bade him to return in 9 months' time, for he would find a son. He obeyed the injunction, and at the appointed time, he opened the grave again and found a head on the leg of bones of a skeleton. The same voice bade him guard it well, for it would be the giver of all good things, and so he carried away with him. It became his protecting genius and was able to defeat his enemies by merely showing them this magic head. In due course, it passed to the possession of the order.
That's creepy, Jules.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding all kinds of things that I knew, and then there's just more layers of it.
Oh, that sounds like black magic to me. That one does.
And then the Templar individual in the story refers to an individual in the Order of the Knights Templar, which was founded around 1118 by French knights, veterans of the First Crusade. Hughes de Payens and Geoffrey St. Diomer were credited as the founders. The order was created for the protection of pilgrims on the road from Jaffa and Jerusalem. The original 9 knights of the order relied on gifts to sustain themselves. Therefore, they were originally known as the Poor Knights of Christ. King Baldwin II gave them headquarters on Temple Mount of Jerusalem. This area was above what was believed to be the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. It was from this location, the Temple of Solomon, combined with their original name, the Poor Knights of Christ, that the order adopted the name Knights Templar. The order became rich, housing the wealth of the crusaders and receiving copious gifts from its supporters. The order created the first banking system with checks and credit card-like transactions. It also built and maintained a fleet of ships that transported goods and pilgrims to and from the Holy Land. They quickly became experts in commerce, and their non-tax-paying status only helped build their posterity. I mean, I could go on, but I think you guys know. And then, here it comes back to the Templars, however, were an ingenious order. They created cutting-edge social standards and practices that are still largely in place today. And again, this is this guy who wrote this, his opinion. I believe one very simple solution they adopted rather than falling prey to maritime piracy was the use of their battle flag on the high seas, the skull and crossbones. Let us revisit a very important part of the Skull Obsidian legend. It became his protecting genius, and he was able to defeat his enemies by merely showing the magic head, which would be the skull and crossbones. It's possible that because there was only one magical relic, the order recreated the white skull and crossbones on the cloth of pitch black. This flag became the nautical battle flag of the Knights Templar and said several things all on one simple design. So you have the Jolly Roger that, according to this guy, that was existed a few hundred years before this it resurfaced in the 1700s, around 1712. So what kind of was going on in between that time span?
It's,
That's where it's a gray area for me. That's where you don't hear a lot about piracy, but it's always been going on.
it's funny that time span. That's where there's a big question mark in history on any level. You know, whatever subject you look at, can do them with history and the earth, because there's piracy went on in all sorts of places. Is the best way I could say it.
Yeah.
Sorry, no.
Well, they called it the Dark Ages. And I think it's labeled appropriately because they're trying to keep us in the dark.
Yeah.
About what happened or what was happening back then. My assumption was a cataclysmic event occurred on the earth that they don't want to share, because history can easily be changed within a few generations. And that possibly there was something that occurred between, I think, maybe around like between the 1300s and the 1700s. You know, because there's these timelines and people talk about the 2600 year timeline. So every 2,600 years.
Yep.
Something happens.
Yeah, and that's in the timeline. And I imagine that would be happening, and just after it, they went around covering everything up. That's when everything turned, and the pirates become hunted because their job was no good, and they were useless. And actually, the truth was they knew too much, so they hunted them down and made them out to be really bad guys when they were doing the bidding of the royalty. And that was a big time of cover up. At the moment, everyone, if you watch all different channels, the Mud Flood, Tartaria, whatever you want to call it, the Dark Ages, I'm sure we're going to find new names for it all. That period of time, I do believe we had an incursion of some sort, whether it be a mud flood or a big volcano went off and covered the sky with ash and stuff, which would have cooled it down and made everything, you know. We haven't got it pinpointed down yet, but we all know something happened there. And I think if we look into things like the Pirates, Knights and Templars, how they're all put together and stuff like that, we might get a little picture.
I would also speculate that because of the race of the empire was going on at this period, if you look at some of the history books, which question them and make sure they're validated by other history books that support the same thing, but who knows if we're being manipulated by the books anyway.
True.
Cynicism.
History.
Well, nobody's interested in herstory. It's always history.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Washington disease and that huge phallic penis of Osiris. I mean, the Washington Monument. But
funny you mentioned Washington, because I found out that way back at the House of Burgess, he was swilling the vote with this drink called Bumbo, and he had nearly 200 gallons of Bumbo to persuade people to vote for him. And Bumbo is actually the pirate variation of the Navy grog. So I mean, back then communication wasn't widespread as it is now. Newspapers in the 1700s, they were probably very few, unless I mean, unless you lived outside of the city. I mean, you didn't always get news ASAP. So for Washington to know Bumbo and how to make it different, I wonder who he knew, or he was definitely a Mason, but were the Masons in cahoots with the pirates?
Oh, we're not there yet, Jules.
we
We're still back with the Templars. And
Okay, okay,
they're
okay.
need a map.
so back to the Jolly Roger. So look at the iconography of the Jolly Roger. The first thing that we can denote is the skull. The human skull is full of mathematics, where you will find the Fibonacci sequence throughout the human skull. And then if you look at the crossbones, now the largest bones in the body are the femurs. And when you cross the femurs, and if you look at the skull and bones, and if you complete the skull and bones or the cross bones, if you put an arc on both sides of the cross, what symbol do you see there? The infinity symbol. Do you see that image in your head?
Yeah, I also see if there was a handle on there, if it was still attached like to the spinal column, that would looks like to me it would be like a double-sided sword.
Well,
Sorry.
oh, I mean, yeah, the symbolism and the iconography, and our greatest gift as humans is pattern recognition. And
Yeah,
so
but
we,
you got me thinking. Skull and crossbones. I that's
Yale University,
Yale. That was their secret.
the bonesman
Yeah, and it was rumored that the skull
of
and
Geronimo,
yeah, Geronimo, and it's been passed down from the Bushes.
Prescott Bush
Yeah.
supposedly raided the grave of Geronimo, and they claimed that they returned it, but after scientific deduction, they found out that it was not Geronimo's skull. But yeah,
Very
so
interesting.
yeah, so we have all of these iconographies and this symbolism, and if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean within those movies, you will see or can see major tales and tells of what occurred, because the pirates were also utilized to map the world, because it was Sir Andrew Drake, one of the best known pirates, especially since he was knighted by the Queen because of a huge score he got from Spain. Since Spain was the first so called fleet to get to the New Worlds. Oh, excuse me 1 second. Sorry.
Oh, they say it's got the juice for me. This is, and when I put this, it just kind of I didn't do anything for this. This was just like this is a casual yarn. This is a yarn that I've been wanting to have with Nese for a while. Uh, Luna, I can't hear you. You're muted.
That's because I'm in another ship too far away and I can't hear you.
Uh,
No, I got a shirt with
and I thought that was you that I saw.
yeah. We'll meet in the island for tea. Hey, while we're mucking around, I want to say a very, very welcome to everyone in the chat room. We got Joe.
Yeah,
Holly,
fantastic to see everybody.
We got Connie.
We got Connie, and we got Buzz, and we got Polly, and we got Joe.
Yeah, we got Joe. Hey, Joe. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. You get to see the rough side of us today. I keep playing with my knives. I don't know whether I should show them on
Yeah, that's all right. I have a built-in cat toy.
That's to distract them.
I am not going to go there at all.
Okay, I'll just clean my teeth. I'm getting carried away. Lucky I'm not on the street. I'd probably get arrested.
Oh my! The prepubescent inner child boy is just screaming inside and wanting to say something about your built-in cat toy.
Oh my God!
That's gonna be a clip for the record.
We are at sea, but please leave that on land. Leave that at port.
I haven't even had me rum yet. Come on.
And
I haven't either.
I apologize.
No, but I was sitting here and we were talking about skull and crossbones and how that originated as a pirate flag. But other pirates, especially the golden age of piracy, it seems like there were a lot of every pirate had their own version of the Jolly Roger.
Oh, you had to personalize it.
Yeah. I mean,
even the Grateful Dead had their own. Interesting enough. But I'm sorry, pity and forgive me. I just received a phone call and they told me I need to pull back the reins a little bit on what I'm sharing.
Gotcha.
I'm so kidding.
And you know I'm gullible, so why do you even do that?
I said, all right, Nese, knock it off. Don't give him too much info.
No,
I want to start a revolution.
Yeah, before we got disrupted, I was just saying how this vibe right now, this is a conversation I've wanted to have with you for a while. Because I had questions, and how much? Can you tell me, fill in some gaps for me with the history of piracy from Phoenicians?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Was it Mark Antony?
So are the Phoenicians, how are they connected to the Templar?
Well, the Mystery Babylon school, the powers that should not be, as I call them, they are going to go around the world and try to maintain and gain more power. So if you go to another, and this is where I proclaim that there is no countries. The whole thing about countries is just a joke to keep us within the cell of his story. Because on each continent, there is a ruling body, a government. And the whole purpose of the government is meant to protect those that govern, to keep the system rolling, to keep the ball going, to keep the Platonic solids in the dark. And I believe the powers that should not be have been in power for 7,000-8,000 years. and we are considered product of all of, okay, I'm getting on a rant, sorry. Long,
No, I mean, please do, because we're on the same page, and this is kind of the speculation I had that you would fill in for me.
well, like
Please.
if we look at the I'm sorry, every time I say the word, if we look at, I start laughing inside because I love that pun. But the island of Tortuga, which was known as the capital of the pirates.
Yeah, it was how that became about, and if actual historical what history wrote, Tortuga became about because when Christopher Columbus discovered it, it looked like turtles, so it was named Tortuga.
Wonderful. And so, with a capital of piracy, you would think that ships from all over the world would gather there. And so, if these ships from around the world are going to gather there, you would imagine that the leaders or the governments of all of these other worlds, continents, countries, they would send their ambassadors so they can have commercialism. Because the biggest challenge with commercialism is that people of different races will interconnect. People with different tribes will interconnect. The people of China will connect with the people of Asia, and the people of Asia with Africa and Spain, and all of this mingling of the peoples, all these minglings of the species will eventually cause us to be a one race world, because we'll eventually fornicate under consensual knowledge ourselves into a mutt, what we call a mutt in the dog breeds. So they would have to establish borders in order to keep control of how we have these interracial marriages and unions. And you can see how the slowing down of the mingling of the waters. Sorry, prepubescent boy laughing there. So as we have these mingling of the waters and all of these different races start meeting and causing more population, which causes more product, which causes more citizens, which cause each country to gain more power. And each country is part of an empire. And so these empires would utilize their ships to sail the seven seas to have inner water commerce, admiralty law, maritime admiralty law.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask you. The flag, looking at a flag, there, what's the right way to tell if we're actually under maritime law? Because I've yarned with people, and they tell me to look for the way the flag is.
The gold fringe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the irony of the flag in itself is, if you look at the Capitol and when Congress gathers and you see that flag hanging behind them, that is the actual true and correct flag and how it's supposed to be held. Because if you think about back in yesteryear, and they would have a big, huge cross, and they would have somebody carrying this big, huge cross, and hanging from the cross would be their banner. And if you watch something like, what's it called, Game of Thrones, or if you see these wars of years ago that are portrayed in the TV, they'll show all the different banners of the different houses or of the different tribes or of the different military.
Can I ask a question? Here in Australia, everyone thinks our flag's blue, not the Aboriginal flag, the Australian flag, but it used to be red. When I was a little girl, it was red, and I don't even remember when it changed. I wasn't paying any attention. So obviously it's significant. So whoever we were under when it was red is not the same person now that it's blue, and we can get in big trouble for saying this stuff, but lucky.
Well, my assumption with that, Luna, is that they were flying the red flag because they loved the fact that the Aborigines' blood was flowing in the streets.
Thanks,
and once they realized that most of the Aboriginals were dead, they're like, well, it's no longer red. Let's go to blue for the blue blood.
That's a good cover story. Yeah. But I noticed that. I actually noticed it the other day again because I watched something. I watched the Queen come to Australia, trying to find my mum in there, and noticed all the flags were red. And I remembered when I was a kid, how did that change? Anyway, hey, we got Tommy.
Yeah, we have another member come up from below deck.
Yeah.
Speaking about Captain Tommy, how you be?
I be keel hauled.
Then it must be the ghost of Captain Tommy, because you usually didn't survive a keel hauling.
No, you didn't. They keel hauled you on one side of the ship and down the other side. So no antibiotics back then, so you basically were dead.
No, I mean that a lot of press gangings went back on in the day.
Well, that's one of the misnomers, about the whole thing about a pirate wearing a patch. The main reason why a pirate wore a patch is so one of his eyes would be accustomed to the dark. So when you are going below deck and above deck, if you know what it's like to go from light to dark, and you have that time of getting acquiring your night vision. So they would keep a patch over their eye, because if you lost an eye, you usually died of infection. Same with a peg leg and a hook, because it was treacherous. When you're fighting with swords and stuff, you're going to lose a hand. If you're utilizing these ropes, and if a rope snaps and a sail comes, and next thing you know, you lose a limb. And apparently, to get a peg leg or to get a hook was rather expensive. And to steal the joke, I heard it usually cost you an arm and a leg.
So I mean, pirates were the first to actually have workers' compensation for every you were $600 if you lost your right arm, $500 if you lost your left arm, $500 if you lost your right leg. You would get $400 if you lost your left leg, and loss of an eye was $100. And these are all pieces of 8. And loss of a finger, each finger you lost was $100. And I found from a historical fact checking received place statista from somewhere over in the UK.
Yes, and you'd only get $19.99 for losing your booty.
That was a lot of money back then, though.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot of money back then for compensation. because the whole oh, I don't. I must have closed out of the window, but I had a whole article pulled up on the difference between a doubloon, a realm, the Ashutos, and the Piece of Eight, and just how much they're. That's still a lot of money nowadays.
Well, there are some people that claim that the pirates' life wasn't the best life at all. And one of the reasons why they had a silver hoop earring or a gold hoop earring is that because of the cannon fodder, when they would be fighting, they would hang little strips of wax cloth in their earrings. And so when they would be firing the cannons, they could shove them in their ears. But also, if you died, then your silver earring or gold earring would usually get you enough money to have a decent burial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, the Satyrian iconography. Oh, that's not a different show.
You guys talked about like piracy. A lot of that was sanctioned by royalty as well. They would use the pirates to basically be their puppets, and then they could get away with not having any of the blame if anything went wrong.
Plausible denial.
Yeah, a lot of pirates were just mercenaries, and they were hired by the crown.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the Templars, where a
I was
lot of.
going to say that. Sorry.
I'm sorry, what, Luna?
I was going to say that because they did the same thing what they did to the pirates, to the Templars. They set them out on a quest, and then when they were done with them, they made them into a baddie and hunted them down.
Well, it's the same game, same game pieces, same checkerboard. Checkerboard. Look at the floor of the Masons, and look at the floor of some of these pirate ships. Look at when you go into a courtroom. When you go into a courtroom, look at the iconography and the symbolism of maritime admiralty law. Yeah. So it's there, but my latest cliche I like, how can we pay attention when distraction is for free?
Yeah,
True.
true. I was thinking about
Because
distraction.
even I'm sorry, I get so excited about pirates I could just go on for days and days. So go ahead.
Keep it going. Well, I'm looking at it. What I want to know is because the deck of the ship is maritime law, which is mirrored in the courts and all that, right, on land. So when it comes to a pirate ship, it's the same thing. So I'm looking at the laws, like when they were in favour, they would have had the same kind of laws. When they were out of favour, didn't their laws change a bit, and that's how they got known for being a bit rough? And
Well, the law of the sea supposedly supersedes the law of the land because there's more sea than there is land. And it's ironic that if you look historically, that the church actually raised the water table level so that the law of the sea would incorporate more land than
yeah,
it did.
hang on a minute. Wait a minute. My little mind just flipped around. How can you have more cups than liquid? Right? How can you have more liquid than cup? No, at the bottom of the ocean, what's at the bottom of the ocean? Land. Is there not?
Oh, don't you? This is one of the biggest arguments that's going on in America that nobody is talking about. They are now having arguments in the court system. Who owns the land under the rivers and the lakes?
Oh my gosh.
Nobody.
I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, that's actually going on right now, and they're claiming. I believe my theory. This is why they dammed up all of these rivers and stuff, because if you own a great lake And if a river comes off that Great Lake and its tributaries go to other lakes and ponds, then allegedly you also own everything that your tentacles reach out and touch. So it's just more power, and more power.
In our culture, the rivers were neutral. They were everybody's place.
Yeah, that was our freeways and highways and roads were the rivers. That's how we got around. You know, a lot of people would be like, well, why didn't they bring on the wheel in America? Well, how are you going to roll a wheel, even a cart, if every 10 yards is 130-foot great northern pine? Look at the history of the deforestation that occurred in North America. And that was one of the things that was easier. Well, now we're getting beyond piracy. Well, it's piracy. The greatest historical piracy that occurred was the stealing of our lands, Luna. Especially, they realized that it was easier to steal North America because of winter. Because of winter is coming. Metaphorically and literally. Because when winter comes here, and if you don't know how to survive in the winter without electricity, without the common comforts, you are fornicated under consensual knowledge.
You will die.
Yes.
Throw your body in the sea.
And when it gets to the point of you don't have any propane gas, you don't have any kind of gas for heating, no electricity for heating, we'll be saying, help us, daddy, mommy, government. That's great. It starts with an earthquake.
Snakes.
Did you know?
That reminds me, how did they keep themselves warm on a ship?
I'm sorry, what?
How did they keep themselves warm on a ship?
Summer loving happens so fast.
Did you watch that show? Our flag means death.
You know, I mean, they say that's not the point. There were pirates who would legitimately claim stake on each other in order to keep their wealth.
Yep. And they also they would also smuggle women dressed as men to be like the captain's boy.
Yar, now we got it.
Yep. I mean, look at Bonnie, some of the pirates. You know.
Yeah, and Bonnie, Mary Ruby.
Bonnie, and
us girls are going to talk about the women pirates and that tomorrow.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many women pirates there were. And you know, when I got dressed up, Nese, I know you can't see it, but I got dressed up kind of proper. We're not historically correct, but when I put these on and got dressed like this, something happened to me, and I just want to go out and run amok.
I'll go with you.
Did you guys get that video I sent you on Skype?
No, obviously not. I'll have a look.
Oh, dang it.
I haven't received anything.
What was it called? That would help.
It was called Pirating.
Pirating.
It's a video of me dressed up as a pirate.
Ooh, hang on. You got to find that, Jules.
I just looked. I'm not seeing it, but then again, I'm not in a group chat or anything.
I think I just posted on Facebook, but
I haven't got Facebook.
No, fake book.
Oh, okay, fake book.
So where are we historically now, Tommy?
Fuck. I'm sorry.
Well, you got me thinking. You guys were talking about ownership of the lakes and rivers and all of that, and then it popped in my head. Guess who owns the largest aquifer in South America and one of the world's largest supplies of water?
Uh, could it,
Amazon.
could it be Mr. Gates?
Actually, the Bush family. They bought 300,000 acres in South America, and underneath it is one of the largest sources of water in the world.
Oh yeah, Paraguay or
Paraguay.
Paraguay.
Yeah, exactly. In Paraguay.
Yeah.
They're
Look
doing
at
that here, Tommy, because a lot of our water is underground, artesian basins, and they bought all the land up all over. And I reckon that's why, because they're water grab.
well, as long as we already are sailing around Speculation Island, I have proclaimed all of this fighting that's going on in America about the pipelines is actually a cover up because they're squawking about building these pipelines over rivers. I believe what they're doing is going to these rivers and pumping out the water and bringing it to their deep underground military bases or possibly bases on the moon or Mars
Oh, look, I
or
wouldn't put
their
it past them, Nese.
space
For all we
city.
know, they could be selling our water to one of our visitors.
Yeah.
Yep, because if you look at, oh my God, now you're going to get me on H2O. Why?
And
Yeah.
you're taking me straight to Kenneth Johnson and V.
No,
The letter Y.
the things we saw on the sea at night.
A lot of UFO reports state that the UFOs were taking water. So evidently they need water for something.
Well, if you look at the H2O, two molecules of hydrogen, one molecule of oxygen. And when you, oh, sorry, I thought I was going to get a phone call. But so if you look at the letter Y, the split of the Y is the two hydrogen molecules. The one base is the oxygen molecule. It has to go with sacred geometry and phi. And when you figure out how to separate all of those molecules instantly, a reaction occurs that can be harnessed for power, energy, fuel.
True.
So utilizing the hydrogen and oxygen separately, sort of like breaking it down through what is it, electrolysis?
It's a little bit more than that, but using magnetism, the properties and principles of magnetism.
They used to run cars on water. So
Well, they still do, but they don't let us know.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I knew a fellow who knew how to do that, and he lived in the bush, and then he disappeared one day.
The big oil companies can't have that, can they?
I just keep having visions of a pirate in the day sailing through the sea, and a bloody big UFO comes and sucks him up with the water.
Well, I mean, it's the same game, the piracy. I mean, remember the whole fiasco about music and the rights of music, and what do they call it? Piracy.
Yeah, that popped in my head earlier. Actually, the different words we use for piracy.
But let me step back a little bit, because now we have the new creation of the 13 colonies. Again, Masonic symbolism, 13.
Yes.
And then you look at the alignment of these cities and how they come in alignment with some claim ley lines. But not only that, with the whole battle of the separation of America and England, the United Kingdom. So England was upset because of losing money in commercialism, because the pirates were stealing commerce products from all of these shipping fleets. And then the pirates would go up and down the coast and they would sell it on the black flag market. And this is one of the reasons why in Boston, that there was such a force of Britain Navy, is because they wanted to stop the pirates coming into Boston and trading with the new colonies. Yeah, all by design. Another one of my speculations and theories, John Hancock, the largest signature.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that John Hancock was actually a famous pirate, and he signed it like that specifically to insult the king, because a John Hancock was a profanity of somebody who just stands around with their hand on their and worthless. And so the biggest name they wanted the king to see was that there.
Uh-huh.
And so, like the Princess Bride, I am the dreaded pirate robbers, unforgivable prisoners. And in the storyline, the Wesley, he became the pirate Scott. And he wasn't the original, that there was 4 before him. And these pirates, they would get so wealthy that they'd be like, all right, I'm done pirating. I'm gonna go take over Virginia and change my name to George Washington. Or
No, I mean, and that's where, I mean, it's as we approach Speculation Island, that
Samuel Adams.
yeah, I mean, that totally goes in line with the thought I had of George Washington serving trying to buy all those people's votes with Bumbo, which is the pirate version of the British drink grog.
Yeah. Well, also look at historically what happened once they were able to systematic genocide the indigenous people of South America and North America. Within 10 years of Columbus' so-called invasion, that Spain, or the gold of Europe, increased 800 tons.
Yeah.
And that's why Spain became so rich. And this is why the other countries, empires, started attacking Spain and Spaniards and their ships, because they were getting wealthy. Because the Spain and the Knights Templar, they went to South America, and they were the one that encouraged all of the mutilation and massive murders of the indigenous people. They keep saying like these Aztecs and all of them, they just did sacrifice after sacrifice. Well, they did that on the behest of the Knights Templar that said, hey, go get us gold. And so they would send the Aztecs out to go raid all the other places and get their gold. And they would end up killing people. Yeah. Lies, lies, lies. Yeah. They're going to get you.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, you had Sir Francis Drake, and he was licensed by Queen Elizabeth I to rob the Spanish. I mean, that was all official. So
yeah, one of the most well-known pirateer occurrence, when I think he got a big, huge Spanish merchant ship, and he stole something like 18 times the national debt of London that year. And so Queen Elizabeth I, I think it was,
Yeah,
he
it was one.
yeah, she knighted Drake, and that's when he became Sir Francis Drake.
Exactly. I guess being knighted was his reward for what he had done.
Right. And it was one of the things that kind of initiated the war between Spain and England.
So it was part of all that because England didn't want anyone to be richer than them, so they made the pirates to go out and steal from the other rich people.
Well, it was just that constant battle of power. One elite group wants to be more powerful than the other elite group. So they're gonna throw each other to the dogs so they can get more power, because once your country gets bigger, then you have more product. The product is the citizens.
And what they do since the beginning of time, all these governments, even today, they have these proxy wars. They don't directly fight each other, but they'll have another country, and then they'll have proxies, and they'll go to war that way, so it's nothing directly coming back to them.
Plausible denial.
I mean, not to get off too much, but Vietnam, that was a proxy war. It was the Americans versus the communists.
So I had two things running. One was, obviously, if they're all going to out to be better than each other, they're going to knock themselves all out eventually. So we just got to sit back and wait. That's what I want to say. The Vikings and pirates are kind of similar.
Yeah, the Vikings were definitely here long before
Columbus. They're both seafarers. They both except the pirates. Yeah, the pirates landed sometimes and stole things. They didn't just fight a ship and take over ships.
Yeah.
They would have landed some places and.
I mean, with their voyages and everything. I mean, the food and stuff that they would take, that they would deplete along the way, and then if they were at sea for a long amount of time, they would literally. It wasn't just always the gold that they were searching. They were looting everything. They were looting food because they needed it. I mean, if on a long voyage, the hardtack was a staple because it would store up to a year. And back they didn't have Tupperware or refrigeration or anything. They literally would store stuff in wooden barrels. And there was a cooper. That's what his position was to dismantle the wooden barrels when they're not in use, and then when they were in use, he would skillfully craft them back together. And the pirates often ate in the dark because over time their food would become, even the hardtack would become infested with weevils. So they ate in the dark because they prefer not to look at what they're eating. And under rancid, they depended heavily on spices.
Lower decks were usually dark black, pitch black, because they did not welcome lanterns below deck. So that's something that had to be very careful, because you're in a wood matchbox. And so, yeah. But yeah, I agree that the piracy of all products, produce, anything and everything, because then they would trade it amongst themselves and profiteer.
Yeah. Sounds familiar. Changes over time. Maybe just the outfit. Interesting. Wouldn't it be funny if pirate jumped through time and jumped in and went, I don't believe what they tell you. We bought food and that when we landed it and helped out the normal people. It was only You know, it was a bit like bikers these days. You know, we're just against the authorities, not the normal people.
Yeah, and that's why the Caribbean areas were liked by the pirates because of the vegetation that they could grow, the fruits that they didn't often have when they were at sea.
Because
Well,
imagine they had partners and children here and there. You're a sailor, Nese. Tell us about it. You know
A
what I'm
woman
saying?
in every port, right?
Yeah. Unless she was a pirate woman, then she'd have a man at every port.
it was more a sailor in every port.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
but
lived that life.
one interesting thing that I kind of uncovered, and it was new to me, and it was one of those that's like, that's interesting. So I, I think I may have uncovered the difference between a tavern and a pub.
Could you say that again, please, Jules?
I think I may know the difference between a tavern and a pub. Both of them are known to serve ale, beer, spirits, occasional food. So a pub is the shortened version of public house.
Right.
When pirates would go to a town, there would be so many of them that they would be likely you would find them in a tavern. If they were more of a wanted sailor pirate, I mean, he would have somebody go and look for a public house, which offered a place to stay and consume your beverages, eat your meal without being so in the public eye. And pub became the shortened version for public house.
Right. So nowadays, if we see a tavern and a pub, which would you recommend that we go and visit?
Well, a tavern strictly is a tavern. You can't stay the night if you need to stay. A public
Right.
house, they would open up their home into a pub. You would have a room, and that was the public house. That was the difference between a pub and a tavern.
I think the biggest difference is spelling.
We got lots of pubs here. But isn't it today? It's the hotel and motel, isn't it? That's the difference. Hotel and motel.
Well, the hotel, motel, Holiday Inn. Say if your friend starts acting up, and then you. Oh, sorry.
I was waiting for the rest of that.
I'm no expert, but I always thought the difference between a hotel and a motel was a motel is all one level, and it's literally you drive your motor car vehicle, you drive your motor out of the front, and you can park outside of the front door. A hotel, you can't do that. I mean, that by no means, I have no idea if that's actual truth, gospel, or just what I think. I'm just putting it out there.
Oh,
I
here
guess if we say amen, it's a gospel.
the moat. Yeah, I don't know. Motel, hotel. I don't know. You got pubs, clubs, taverns, hotels, motels. Really, they're all places to sleep, eat, drink.
And for somebody to make money.
Park your ship. So, if I was a pirate back then, and I know what I know now, I would have had a floating motel hotel ship.
You guys talking about hotels and motels. It pops in my head, Bates Motel. I'm like, yeah, it's a place to sleep unless you go to that place, and then you get killed in the shower. But his mummy made him do it.
That's funny. Another question. So, we're led to believe that pirates sailed around in the warm seas only. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, because if you Scottish, Irish, the Celtic seafarers, Vikings, they were from cold lands. They sailed other places, but specifically the term redlegs, which referred there is a Redlegs Greaves. You know what I mean? If we get a chance, I'll tell you about him. Um, but he got. I mean, it's a poor. The name literally was given to him. That's what they called the colonists that were in Jamaica at the time. They were just poor, came from poor white family, and they were called redlegs. But the way I see it, they were called redlegs because they wore their kilts all year round. So when it was hot and sweaty and sweltering outside, their legs were red from being sunburned. And if they were sailing in those colder waters where it was cold, their legs would be red because of being cold and windburned. So that's where I think red legs comes from. It's a term to classify the Scottish, Irish, Celtic, that lot of.
I would make the assumption because they were red haired and having hairy legs that would be red also. That they would be called red legs because, yeah, I've met a lot of white people that have some major hairy legs.
Captain Redlegs.
So imagine, one of the things known of Scottish and Ireland is the red hair.
Yeah, true. See how history, like you look back in time and it could be any of these things. Makes me wonder what they're going to think of us. They'll watch a show and go, pirates existed back then? They were on shows?
I mean, I can't speak for forever, but it's on the current trend, piracy will be around forever. There's always somebody going to make a buck and exploit somebody for gain, whether it is own or profiteering.
You had piracy. I mean, there's pirate treasure all over the world. You had Captain Kidd who buried his treasure on Gardiner Island in New York. And as far as I know, no one has found that treasure yet, so it's still out there somewhere.
Yeah, Captain Kidd, he as far as dressing and attire that pirates go, I want to say it was Captain Kidd who, I mean, he was hung on the gallows and he was tarred so everybody could see him, but he also was one that when he went to the gallows, he was wearing his Sunday finest.
Yeah, they hung his body on the River Thames. So, and that was supposed to be a warning to the other pirates that piracy was bad. Unless it was sanctioned by the crown, it was okay then.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's all right while they do it, and then as soon as they don't want you anymore, you're a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, Captain Kidd had a falling out with the East India Trading Company, and that pretty much sealed his fate.
Yeah, I mean, the East India Company. I don't really know a lot about them. Was there piracy going on in their ranks as well?
They used pirates when it was convenient for them. They basically profited from piracy, shall we say.
Yeah, because I was going to say, imagine the companies, eventually the pirates were, what is it called, opposition to them, because they were taking their money that they could make. And I think through papers and signing papers and that kind of stuff, that's how they got rid of them. Deals, signing papers and deals. Because it's like pirates one of the last times where you could fight for what you believe in, because now you got to fight with a pen. Back then you could fight with your sword or your dagger.
True.
Now it's all different. Long gone are the days where you just take someone outside and straighten it all out. Or in pirates' case, just take them up on deck or walk the plank. Is walking the plank real?
I don't think it was. I mean, it's debatable, but for walking the plank, I think Hollywood mostly romanticized that. But they did maroon them.
Uh-huh.
That was a form of punishment.
And is it known that pirates would pirate other pirates, or would they leave each other alone and just pirate?
Actually, I'm actually sitting here looking at the Pirates Code. For some reason, it's up. I mean, pirates had a code, and even within privateers, they had a code. I mean, the pirates were very democratic, and that's lately this Templars, Freemasons, pirates kind of have my gears grinding. Um, do you guys remember the pirate Jean Lafitte?
Rings a bell.
Jean Lafitte he was French, and he was the pirate who was in Barataria Bay, and he had a shop in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. This particular shop is still fully functioning and running. It's one of the oldest buildings in the town. The town it has survived fires, and yet this building remains. But Jean Lafitte and his brother Pierre, they were running a smuggling business out of the blacksmith shop. And the historical fact with Jean Lafitte is that he helped America in the War of 1812.
Is his name feet because he had big feet?
Yeah, well, it was the British who wanted him to help. I think it was the British. I'm not wars and me. I don't retain a lot of information, but he was helping. They wanted him to help because he knew the backwaters and the bays of Louisiana like nobody else did, because he spent so much time running in the bayou doing his smuggling business. So they wanted his help, and he said that he would, and he ended up actually going, and it was Andrew Jackson, and basically kind of pulled a fast one on the British. And he kind of helped us, and he got a pardon from it. And then history has written him off around 1825, 1826. And then lately, just by coincidence, I stumbled across, I don't know if you guys can see it, this book that I'm getting ready to dive into. Jean Lafitte actually did not die. He went to Cuba, and he resurfaced years later in Mississippi, and he ultimately ended up in Lincolnton, North Carolina. And why I'm recently fascinated with Jean Lafitte is a town, Lincolnton, North Carolina, that is miles away, at least 1,000 miles away from New Orleans, where Jean Lafitte is noted, inside a Masonic temple home in Lincolnton, North Carolina. They found Jean Lafitte's sword. They looked at it, they authenticated it. Well, I can't say that word, I'm sorry. They looked at it, they made sure it's historically accurate, and it was a military sword that was commissioned and made for the War of 1812.
Wow.
It has his initials and everything in it, and that resurfaced in North Carolina, and they found it under the name Lorenzo Ferrer. And the documents and the historical stuff that they've been finding on him, and Ferrer, incidentally, means blacksmith. So, and that's got me thinking, sword, his last name meaning blacksmith, and he did run his smuggling business out of New Orleans.
Because farrier, the word farrier, that's a horseshoer, a blacksmith. Farrier, it's the same name.
So, I found this lecture on Jean Lafitte, and I listened to it, and This is within the past couple of years. A mother and daughter team who have an interest in pirates and history. They uncovered this information and they kept going and going and going. They've been to Boston. They've been to New Orleans. They've seen all these historical records, even in even in the Caribbean, and that's what's got my attention. And that's the next book I'm getting ready to get into.
I was just thinking about the relatives of the pirates. Like, obviously, they had kids and stuff, and today there would be living relatives of said pirates from them days. And I was wondering whether it was in their blood, and they often feel like jumping on a ship. Be interesting to meet somebody who was related to them.
Yeah, they're doing that with Blackbeard now. I watched or came across somebody who's doing a lot of research on Blackbeard, doing his genealogy and everything, and Blackbeard had a son. Who knew? That ended up in the Royal Navy.
Do you mean William Teach?
Yeah. Yes. Edward Teach. And some things that I've come across on him is people have speculated that he wasn't mean and fierce and gruesome, but he did drink gunpowder in his rum, and he did have fuses in his beard and light him on fire to make himself look intimidating. But I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I can't attest if that's accurate truth or not.
Who knows?
He had a blockade off the coast of South Carolina, so he traveled pretty far as well.
Yeah, well, and Oracoke, that was probably almost towards the end of the golden age of piracy, in the sense that you had all these inlets, and around that time, 1712, around that time when Blackbeard was there, I mean, the land was still vastly unpopulated, vastly undiscovered, so nobody would even think to go up there, because the island was so far. It was a haven for pirates. Could have been.
Yeah, aeroplanes killed the sailing ship, because when they made aeroplanes, you didn't need any sailing ships. And they had a motor. I remember as a kid, we got clippers, what they call clippers, the sailing ships, in our harbour in Sydney here. And one of them, from Cook's days, it was given to us blackfellas, and we got a crew and all that, and you can go out on it still to this day, because I've been out on it. A bit scary, but it was all right. And they'll tell you, take it to special places for our mob. But when you get on the ship and you actually look at the sails and the wooden table below deck, you can feel the ancientness. You can just feel the oldness in it, because it's straight out of from then. It was pretty amazing just to go on one of them ships and feel, because the wood holds all the energy. The sails are probably new, but the wood's the same.
Yeah. So here's a question. We know that Freemasons were master builders. Could the Freemasons also have been master ship builders?
Why not? You know.
I mean, that's a big connection there.
Gentlemen?
You know that the Templars had ships and they were very proficient with sailing. It's speculated that they sailed all the way to North America up towards Canada. What's that show? History Channel's got a show actually where they suspect the Templars had buried some treasure. Oak Island.
Yeah, the Curse of Oak Island.
Yeah, they found a lot of Templar artifacts there on that island.
Yeah, and I reckon that the pirates would have discovered Australia too back then, because they had no one telling them where they couldn't go and where they could go. They just went wherever they wanted to go. I reckon some of them come here too, because we had trade.
Well, they did. I mean, there were other pirate havens apart from the Caribbean. I mean, Madagascar was a pirate haven.
And you probably had a lot of pirates too, did a lot of the cartography and mapped a lot of the world because with their travel, I mean, they probably saw places, before anyone else saw them. So a lot of the maps in the world are probably based on piracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And having a navigator on board was of importance.
Hmm.
And I'm still trying to figure out what's that map, Jules. I think we've talked about it. There's an ancient map that perfectly maps out Antarctica and
Oh, the Puri Reef map.
the
Oh
Perry
yeah.
Reef, and
Yeah.
and there was no way that could have been possible because it was covered completely in ice, and there would be no way to see the land underneath unless that map was made before there was ice in Antarctica.
Yeah. You see, when I think the ice creeped up because of exactly that, and that wasn't that long ago, Tommy. Like we're not talking about that long ago that those maps were made. And it was green. So I know the ice, like those snap frozen elephants. I'm lost for words today because I'm a pirate and I never learned to read or write. No, the mammoths, they found snap frozen mammoths. So it's kind of they saying that the cold came in quickly. So it wasn't that long ago that it was green, and if the cold come in quick, it'll go quick. And it might.
Now,
They were Milton.
one of the
Um,
theories with that was that it was a pole change, and that's why you got the mammoths that were so quickly frozen because the magnetic poles switched all of a sudden on the planet.
yeah. Hang on,
And
I'm just.
Well, it would have been more than just the magnetic change. It would have to be the whole
the whole
spherical thing would
tectonic
have
plate.
tilt. Yeah, along with the magnetic shift, because if you think about in the ground are heavy metals, irons, ores around the world. So as the magnetic pole occurs, the shifting of the poles, so would the tilt of the spheroid, would also shift. And once that shift occurred, depending on where the sunlight was, would depend on how quick it got cold.
True.
And the land masses, you guys are probably familiar with Pangea, and there's been a couple other ones as well. Scientists always say that's a gradual thing, but look at how we have earthquakes that just come up all of a sudden. And a lot of these land masses, they probably could rise and fall in a matter of a day or two.
Hours.
Yeah, I think it's a lot faster than what they theorize.
Well, I've shared this before, but if you think about a rug on a hardwood floor and how it will instantly buckle up, well, that's how the mountain ranges were created. The tectonic plates buckled up upon themselves and created. There's I think it's what is that mountain on the Prudential?
Oh, I know what the mountain that's on the Prudential logo.
The Matterhorn, is it that one? Well, I can't remember, but there's a famous, well-known mountain that one of the biggest anomalies of it is that the top of the mountain is older than the bottom of the mountain. So that means some strange occurrence happened where that entire mountain got thrust up and spun on itself.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, there's land rising today.
That's great. It starts with.
Yeah, so I mean, again, thank you guys for yarning with me. I'm learning things along the way, like I had wanted to.
But wait, there's more.
always more. I mean, we're talking pirates. This could go on for a while. And speaking of while, I completely lost track of time. We're like going on like an hour and 45 minutes. So, I mean, I could come back and yarn for a little bit longer, but I would need a break. But in true pirate form, democracy, we use all get a vote.
Sorry, I had to visit the poop deck.
Would any of you be upset if I got shanghaied and would dip out while you guys went on your break, if you break?
Yeah, I mean, Luna, I mean, Tommy, it's up to you guys. I mean, I got tomorrow night. I've got with Nano Girl and Luna, and as far as I can tell, Sunday night I'm free. If you guys want to come and give me and Luna one more chance to don on the hat. We must have like got this, have the same like person who dresses us because our hats are very similar. Either that or when we were at port, we went to the same shop.
I think so. We did serve on that ship together, remember?
Oh gosh, yeah. I found some stuff I didn't know about mermaids and mermen, and I believe they are. I'm gonna put show your comment because I actually believe that they are real too. My biggest reason for thinking that they're real is the whole legend of the Dogons. They came from the water. They were said to be of the ancients, and those, I speculate that the mermaid is the ancient coming from the Anunnaki. That's how we get those people that wear that hat now. I think. I'm sorry, Nese, go ahead.
My ancestors also talk of the mer people as living, breathing entities.
Yeah, I believe, because they lead you to believe that the pirates were drunk on rum and they were seeing, and the Dogon here is an actual animal, you know, Dogons, or Dugon we call them, and they're pale skin and smooth. They're actually pretty creatures. They reckon because they were drunk, they thought that they were women because they missed the women on board. And I heard that story growing up as a kid, and I thought, that's not true. And then when I got to a teenager and got drunk, I said, that's not true because I've been drunk and I've never seen anything change that much. You don't hallucinate on that.
Yeah, the dugong looks like the manatee.
Yeah, very similar. So that's what they'd have you to believe. But I know they told us that story because in all cultures, the mer people are true. And you'd be a fool to think if we're on land and there's all kinds of creatures on here, the same would be in the water. There'd be intelligent creatures. Dolphins are intelligent. So there would be some kind of being like us that was also intelligent and live there, for whether they're visitors or they're, whatever. So yeah, I believe there are mer people. And if you have a look at some channels, I was looking the other day, there was this young fella, he actually got a job on a fishing boat, and he'd go out and he'd go live on his phone, and you'd hear this singing in the background. And the first time he just went, hear that, and you could see the city in the distance. He thought it was just coming from there, or he didn't pay too much attention. And then he kept going live while he was at work on the ship, and he kept hearing the noise again. Anyway, strange things kept happening, and one day he went to go to work on the ship, and the government had set up a scientific, what would you call it, like a shed on the ship, and it had a sign on it, scientific exploration on his ship, and all things changed from that day, and he stopped live streaming. So why would they do that if what he was hearing wasn't real? And there's other shows as well where they've gone underwater and they've accidentally seen something swimming past that doesn't look like anything we know. They're water people.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too far-fetched to believe because you had so many creatures transition from a sea life to a life on land. So therefore, creatures on land could transition back to life at sea.
True. I agree.
Um, there's always been sort of a theory like the ancestors of dogs. They went back into the ocean and then they evolved into dolphins. So you've got those theories out there like that.
You haven't heard that one before, but all things possible until you see in
Yeah,
front of
and I came across some folklore stories that Scottish people up to today believe that they're descendants of merfolk.
Yeah, one of my daughters, she was born with fine white down. And straight away I thought of, because we are Irish in us, I thought of that seal story where the seal comes up and is a woman and then has children, and the children are got born with fine white down. And I'm looking at my baby with this really black hair, like she's got jet black hair, and this fine white down all over her body. And I'm thinking, wow, you
Yeah,
know, you come
I mean, there are, other lands have tales of um, mermaids in Africa, mermaids in Japan, mermaids in China, and they're synonymous with the serpent symbolism, the symbol of enlightenment.
Yeah, you have various cultures who supposedly didn't communicate with one another, and they all had these similar stories of mermaids.
Mhm.
Same concept with dragons. You know, every culture has a dragon, but none of these people supposedly communicated and traded with one another. So it has to be some truth in there somewhere.
Yeah,
See, because I'm thinking about pirate days, like they've been around for a long time. They would have travelled a lot of places. They would have heard stories like this travelling around, stories that no one else heard. And I'm wondering what they saw in the sea. They would have saw mermaids. They would have saw other,
well, I mean,
you know, saw things flying in the sky, like
there is
dragons.
a distinct difference between a mermaid and a siren. A
Yeah.
mermaid had the half aquatic body and the half fish body, but the siren actually was more bird like. And the siren actually flew and was local to an island, whereas a mermaid was only found in the water.
Oh, I thought there was. This is what I was led to believe, or what I led myself to believe. um, there were two kinds of mermaids. One was more looking like us, and the other had sharp teeth and didn't really like us. And I thought they were the sirens, and the other ones were the mer people. But like I said, until it's right in front of you, and we got one of them telling us their story, we won't know for sure. Unless you're a scientist in the government and you know all about it. Actually, the Russians, I saw this thing. They found a mer person. It was a short clip, and this was ages ago, because when I started doing all my research on this stuff was years ago, before YouTube started getting uh, straight, hard on what it shows people. Anyway, it was a Russian clip from the Russian army, and there was a mer guy in the water, and you could see him from the waist up as he come out the water, and they filmed it. And he looked humanoid. He had two arms and a head. You couldn't see the rest of his body, but I presume it was some aquatic-like looking thing, because he wasn't standing up. He came right up on his arms like this. He had a rounded head. His mouth was a bit different, more fish-like. His eyes were obviously adapted to the water, but he still had eyes like us. And it was just a really short clip. And I said to my husband, "Does that look real to you?" He didn't think it looked real, but when I looked at it, I thought it looked real, because it was so strange. It was so not normal. And then no one could see it anymore, so I presume that it was real. Otherwise, if it wasn't, it'd be like all the other mermaid things and that you see today. Still, you can get on YouTube and that, and they're fake, because you can see it and they let you see it. That's my figuring anyway.
Yeah,
Hard.
you can take a
So
look at
the siren is only found in Greek mythology, whereas the mermaid is found in all civilizations and cultures of folklore stories.
Tommy?
I would say take a look at your hands, and you've got webbing in between your hands.
Yes.
You know? I
Yeah.
mean, at some point, we probably our ancient ancestors probably existed in the sea somewhere.
Yeah. And you got it on your toes too. My toes are pretty webbed. That skin between. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
I wonder where our gills were.
really, like back here,
Where
back
the
here.
glands,
There-
gills.
I think there's been some like abnormalities of births where they have like gill-like features to them. You know, it's probably some kind of recessive gene that comes out every so often.
Yeah,
Because
actually,
you also have some humans that are born with tails.
yes,
You know,
yes.
this
And
kind of
it's,
stuff
and
happens.
it's yeah, we have humans born. They'll tell you they're a medical sickness, but I actually believe they're genetic remnants, because you have them born all sorts of ways. Yeah, hairy, even hairy, like you can get the ones that are all hair. They call them like wolf people. They still exist. Yeah.
Because if you see a picture of an embryo in the womb, they start out with a tail, and then it
Yeah.
goes away as the baby gets older.
Yeah. Yeah, I reckon pirates saw all manner of things. I think they were not just dangerous on the job that they were doing for the powers that should not be, but they were dangerous because of what they saw in them days and what they knew, because they travelled far.
I mean,
They
they
never
probably,
know pirate. And why isn't this? When we were doing this show, like to prepare for this show, I was looking around, and there's not actually a lot of rigid, true stuff on pirates. Like I was looking for historically correct costumes. You barely get it, and what there is hardly anything compared to all the array of stuff that you can look
Oh,
up.
yeah. I mean, well, of course, it only makes sense that when you're writing his story, you're going to focus on the wars, the things that draw attention. I mean, all throughout the course of history, everything that I've uncovered, it's always you put the bad deeds, that's what you focus on, and the light is always hidden.
Mm.
and then there's a saying, history is written by the winners. So it's always
That's
from a
right.
certain point of view.
So I think there's a lot more to piracy than they're leading us to believe. And if it was that bad, why would it still exist today?
Exactly. Over here, our democracy is all whole kind of loot, a whole lot of looting going on,
Whole lot of
Yep.
piracy.
a whole lot of piracy.
Yep. And wouldn't a pirate get confused today? It'd be like, oh, that music's pirated, huh? That movie's pirated, huh? And he'd be in his head, he'd be thinking, how could music and a movie be on a ship? Like,
Uh,
You never pirate, you always commandeer.
commandeer. Oh, look.
well, I must have commandeered that Thor movie the other night then.
Yeah, I commandeered. What did I commandeer last night? 1,000 Years. Oh, it's a really good movie. 1,000 Years of. Oh, I forgot the last word. 1,000 Years. Something's about a journey. A lady finds a journey.
Commandeered nothing last night except the back of my eyelids.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably going to sail the 7 seas after we get off here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we might as well go ahead and hang ourselves on the galley, I guess, for the night at least, just tonight.
I was just busy pirateering myself, and we just a merchant ship full of cannabis from the Indies.
Ooh, the hemp trade.
So I'm about to be shanghaied by Mary Jane.
You know, the sails were made of hemp back then, them old days, from what I remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They used it for ropes and sails and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so were our clothes.
And pitch and don't get me going down that rabbit hole.
All right.
I'm going to be dipping out
So
Thank you,
yes, I mean,
Jules.
thank you for coming, Nese. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Luna.
Thank you.
For
I
a
had fun.
wonderful evening. And those that I can see in the chat, Polly was here, Connie was here, Buzz,
Joe.
and if
Okay.
there's anybody else I have forgotten, thank you all for stopping by. Until next time, which is tomorrow, right here at the Bittersweet, going to be coming at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Me and Luna are going to be back, and we're going to be back with our other pirate sister, Nano Girl.
Yeah.
So I'll drop the link tomorrow after I've slept in and had a pot of coffee. But yeah, I'll drop it so you guys know where to find us. But thanks for coming. Have a wonderful evening. Much love to you.
Hello.
Yalu.
Toodles.
See
Bon
ya.
voyage.
Rawr.